What do you need to coach neurodiverse clients? I am going to explore this with you right now on the Coaching Hub with Ruth Kudzi. So neurodiversity, it feels like we are finally having the conversation. So people are recognizing that their brains are not neurotypical. And I'm one of those people. So back when I was about 20 and I started university, because I was a little bit later, I remember my first interaction with my personal tutor. He said quite directly, "Ruth, have you ever realised that you're dyslexic?" I was like, "Sorry?" And he said, "Yeah, you're obviously dyslexic. From getting to know you and from your essay, it's really clear." I didn't do anything with it. Maybe the delivery could have been a little bit kinder, but I recognised that my brain was probably different. I felt different growing up. I always thought, and that's probably why I studied psychology, like, I'm not the same as other people. Like, I wanted to be the same as other people, but I knew that there was something that was a bit different about me. And then in 2020, my mum sent me a screenshot of something that had been in the Times, and it said signs that people have got ADHD. And she went, "Oh my gosh, Ruth, it all makes sense. You tick all of these." And I used to run inclusion in secondary schools. That was my job. I was in charge of inclusion, including neurodiversity in secondary schools. It never, ever, ever crossed my mind that I might have ADHD, because I probably, if I'm honest, thought that ADHD meant that you were really hyper, out of your seat, typical kind of those behaviours that we were led to believe demonstrated it. And I didn't feel like that. But when I dug a bit deeper, I went out, bought the Times, read the article and was like, oh my gosh. So things like your bedroom was always chaos, but you produced great work. People ask me a question and I will answer the question by telling them a really long story, because that's how my brain works. So recognizing that actually I did have it and I went on to get a diagnosis was a huge turning point for me, as I realized I was different, but I wasn't really that different. There were other people like me, and that was reassuring, because I spent years making myself feel bad about things. I also am not always a finisher, but I had such guilt about that. And I used to think that people would find out that I hadn't finished something at work and they would come back and like tell me off years later. Newsflash, I don't think anyone probably ever noticed. So again, I wasn't looking at myself in a neuro-affirming way. I wasn't looking at what my strengths were. I was looking at myself in a deficit way. I'm not good at this. And it really impacted me. And I remember I am someone who can talk a lot, who's got lots of ideas. I remember overhearing my boss in my first teaching job say to someone else, "How do you keep up with Ruth? She's just constantly on the go. She's got all of these ideas. She's always talking. It's exhausting." And I felt so awful. I was like, what is wrong with me? And actually now I'm like, let's embrace. I'm creative. I'm engaged. I'm passionate. But I definitely didn't feel like that. So from knowing about my own neurodiversity, it made me realize why some things in coaching I found jarring. Probably if you've watched the videos, you'll know that I'm not a massive fan of models. I do think they've got a place, but it did feel a little bit like a sausage factory. And actually, I like personalisation. Relationships are really important to me. So again, I was starting to think, oh, actually, this is about my neurodivergence, but how could we help others? So I went on a massive quest to learn more about neurodivergence, even though I'd got quite a lot of experience from working in schools. So I did a lot more training and reading, and I then collaborated with Claire Farmer, who I met doing leadership training to become a head teacher. She became a head teacher. She works with the Autistic Girls Network and has got lots and lots of experience in this field. She's founded a company called Neurodiversity. So I worked with her to develop a neurodiversity coaching certification. There's a caveat here though. I actually don't believe that you need to have that training to coach well in neurodiversity, because great coaching for neurodivergent people is the same as great coaching for neurotypical people. It's personalized, it's client-centered, it focuses on what the client needs, and it is relational. So in a way, if you are a great coach and you've been trained by Optimus, so I know you would be, then you don't need to do additional training. However, you may want to, because understanding the brain differences can get you to personalize more effectively. And so for me, that is the key to the training, recognizing actually what is going on in the brain that is different, what may or may not have influenced that person in terms of societal norms. Because again, a lot of neurodivergent people like me carry this identity of being different, maybe not fitting in. So actually some exploration of identity work, it can be really, really important. You know, strengths, really important, because again, often people have got that deficit approach, not that neuroaffirming approach, building on. So having some training that allows you to understand different brains can really support you to personalize your experience. Having an understanding of strengths-based approaches and neuro-affirming approaches where you support without judgment can be really affirming for your coaching. So it's not that you need it, but you might want it. You might want to enhance your practice. You might really think about actually, how can I tailor these experiences so they are more inclusive? Knowing that every brain is different. That is one of my pet peeves. People say, oh, I've got ADHD and so has his other client, so I'll treat them the same. Okay. Doesn't make any sense. Their brain will still be different. Yes, they may share some similarities in executive functioning, but again, like anything, your profile will be spiky. Everyone's profile will be different, but also everyone's beliefs, their context, their identity, their lived experience, their genetics, everything is unique to the individual. So when people have very prescriptive, for ADHD clients do this, it switches me off. And obviously I've got ADHD. But when you go, okay, so when you have someone with an ADHD brain, this could be useful, that could be useful, this could be useful. That is more inclusive. And that's why I say about intake sessions, taking time to get to know the client, understanding their brain, what helps them, what hinders them, how do they like to communicate? You know, again, building that base so you're hearing them and you're personalizing them works for all clients, but is very neuro-affirming. Also, we have this other gap. So I always say, if you are coaching someone who's neurodivergent, they know they're neurodivergent, they've got a diagnosis, they know what works for them, brilliant. You know, you can have a great intake session and work together really, really well. You know and understand them, you know, and you can build that as you get to know them too. But you also have neurodivergent clients who may not disclose that they're neurodivergent. Often that is because they're working in an environment that they feel unsafe to disclose. So that's an interesting one. So you might think, maybe there's something going on here. But unless you are able to diagnose, never diagnose someone's neurodivergence. You know, it's not your role as a coach. But again, you're still thinking about how can I personalize this experience for the client? So understanding maybe let's think about what I could do here is useful. So knowing those strategies, even if you are not working with people who know they're neurodivergent or who explicitly say they are, can be helpful. Because then we've got the group of people that I sat in for 42, 43 years of my life who are neurodivergent but don't know it. Some people are self-diagnosed. You know, maybe they just read that article in the Times and thought that's me. Or they've seen something on TikTok or Instagram or whatever, and they think that's me, but they haven't actually gone for a diagnosis. Some people are undiagnosed and they've got no idea. So actually, if we are thinking that I reckon about 30% of the population are neurodivergent, about 70% have got a neurotypical brain, about 30% neurodivergent. We are probably coaching people who are neurodivergent every single day, even if they don't know and we don't know. So actually being really clear on great coaching, partnering, so they choose what to do rather than we tell them, asking for feedback, recontracting, being flexible, personalizing. All of those things are the hallmark of great coaching. I sometimes get irritated as well when I see people online, for example, talking about visualization and saying coaches tell people to visualize. And I'm like, a great coach does not tell you to do anything. They may invite you to explore that if it works for you. If you have got aphantasia, which is a neurodivergence, it's not neurotypical to have aphantasia, you can't visualize. Some people who have got aphantasia have no inner dialogue. So asking people, what is your inner dialogue telling you, when they don't have it, wouldn't work. This is why we explore with people. I never even knew aphantasia was a thing. I thought I was doing visualization wrong. Other people have found it more challenging. So this is the thing. You personalize, you ask, you are okay and unattached to what you're doing because you are always serving the client. So if you are neurodivergent and you are looking at a coach, make sure they have been properly trained. They're accredited by the ICF or the EMCC, and their training has had some touch on neurodivergence, so they know that there is flexibility with the ICF competencies, for example, based on the client's needs. The ICF, the International Coaching Federation, say that about neurodiversity. What you do should serve the client, not serve their markers. So there is a bit of flexibility there. So first of all, you're looking for that, but equally ask them what their understanding of neurodivergence is and how they tailor to you, rather than they've got a one size fits all. That is what great coaching is about. So if people are telling you that they're taking you through a system or a process and there's no evidence base, there's no neuroscience, and it's very directive, I would step away. There is a caveat there. There's some great neuroscience-backed, evidence-based executive function coaching that can be really, really beneficial for some neurodivergent people. And that may be a little bit more directive in nature, but it still will be tailored to the client. So remember that if you want to get coaching, accreditation, adequate training is the hallmark, whoever you are coaching. If you want to find out more about what we offer in terms of neurodivergence coaching, check out our website, optimuscoachacademy.com. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, subscribe, and comment below.